number one. Up.
Okay, a very long list here. First question, how has the current political climate in Thailand affected Phuket? And what are the possibilities that they will resurface before becoming high season? Who wants to take that one first? How has the current political climate in Thailand affected Phuket, and what are the possibilities that these problems will resurface before becoming high season? Come on guys, don't be shy.
I will start if I may. The current political crisis in Thailand, I think, is ongoing, and it probably will be ongoing until the current government and all those that surround the current government are able to actually make a decision on where they want to go forward. And so therefore we can see just in the last couple of days, and that gets blamed on either side, but nobody really gets to the bottom of what's happening. So the current political crisis is still with us. It's being managed in a Thai way, I believe. Let's not say that. Let's not put that in a disparaging way. It's difficult at the moment for decisions to be made to have a proper route forward, and so therefore, the Phuket situation, it is affected. But fortunately, Phuket being as strong as it is with its own governance. And when I say the Phuket governance is, there is the governor and his team, but there's also provincial organisations and local Phuket businessmen who keep Phuket ticking along in quite a nice fashion.
Thank you.
I think one thing we all want to know is how much was Phuket impacted from the red shirt crisis, really on an island which generates a good majority of its economic success from tourism. When we look at the first half figures of this year, say January to the middle part of the year, tourism arrivals spiked like 28% year on year. So 2009 versus 2010. I think there was displacement. It's interesting when you actually look at the figures. Certainly the second quarter of this year we saw a decline, but the first quarter was one of the best quarters ever. If you actually go back to the month of May when we had the red shirts happen, we go back and we tracked 6 years of visitor arrivals in Phuket. This May was actually the best in 6 years. So we did have a demonstrated maybe displacement of people flying, instead of flying to Bangkok, they would come to Phuket. So certainly Phuket was a beneficiary. I think we all agree, certainly the red shirt impact and everything else. It's very hard to separate brand Phuket and brand Thailand. There's not many people, people still are attracted to the Thai brand, and too many people say Phuket can actually live without Thailand, Phuket can actually live without Bangkok. That's not going to happen. So the two are certainly intrinsically, impacted on political events, but certainly from a performance basis and by the figures, Phuket had a great first half of the year, despite what happened in Bangkok.
I would agree. I would agree with what you said, certainly with what Martin said. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. Let me give you some statistics here. There's a thing called a Gini coefficient, which is used for measuring all sorts of things, but in this particular case by economists, it's used for measuring wealth. The percentage of wealth that is in the hands of the top people in society and in the hands of the bottom people. 0 equals total equality, everybody's got exactly the same amount of money. 100 means that one person in the country has all the money and nobody else has any. Sweden at the moment leads the world. It's got a Gini coefficient of 25. Bottom end is Namibia, which has got a Gini coefficient of 71, which means that there's a few people at the top that have most of the money. Thailand's somewhere in between. It's got a coefficient of 43. Uganda is slightly ahead of that, slightly better, and Mongolia is slightly behind. So there's obviously a serious problem here. Forget the politics. Forget all the infighting and so on. There is a serious problem here of wealth distribution. And the red shirt problem is only getting multiplied if we spread the wealth. Now, we can't do this. It's got to be done by the government and the guys who have all the money. The wealthy should be paying big personal taxes, but it's really easy to dodge those. You pay yourself a tiny salary and you make all your money out of your stocks and shares because there is no capital gains tax in Thailand. There's no capital transfer tax, so when you hand over your money to your children, they don't pay anything either. The other side of this is that everybody gets hit by indirect taxes such as VAT, 7% on rice and everything else, which hits poor people particularly. So until the government or someone up there decides to make a move to spread the wealth, the problem's not going to go away. It's going to keep coming back. It's on Phuket. Phuket's very wealthy anyway. At the moment, it's on the right side politically. It's gaining from being allied with the Democrats and red shirts. We have about 1,000 red shirts here and about 40,000, 50,000 Democrats, so I don't think we need to worry about that. But the indirect impact, obviously, is going to be significant if there's more violence. Don't write it off yet.
Yes, I'll move on to the next question. How has the fallout of the world economic crisis affected business and tourism in Phuket?
I think certainly one thing we know is that the world's never going to be the same as it was in 2008. Nothing is ever going to be exactly the same. We had a huge economic machine in America which drove the world, in a feeding frenzy in terms of wealth and commercialism. I don't think we're ever going to have that within the next decade. Everybody says, in terms of property or things, when are things going to get the same? When are things going to be back to the good old days of the middle part of last decade here in Phuket? When are we going to see the people buying property off the land? When are we going to see all the good old days? Frankly speaking, we don't know when things are going to change. If somebody does know that, please see me after the meeting because I'd be happy to actually understand how that's going to happen. One thing we know going for the next decade certainly is we have a whole new world in terms of long-haul tourism certainly started to decline when currencies were starting to be hit. The euro and the pound took a pounding. You go back a few years and you have the pound trading at the mid-70s to the baht, now it's trading in the mid-40s certainly. So you have different standing patterns. After the financial crisis in the U.S. and Europe, you had airlift on long-haul flights, which was shrinking certainly at the same time. And as the recovery slowly seeped in, certainly the Asian economies became stronger and stronger. Asia led the world back from the brink really during 2008. So the dynamics changed. Everybody says now, we're getting different tourists, certainly, but people if you go to England or to the United States, when are the economy is going to recover? We don't see that necessarily happening today, tomorrow, the next day. So I think Phuket really needs to plan ahead for the new generation of tourism.
The Ministry of Tourism and Sports, which seems to be producing all the stats these days as opposed to the TOT, recently brought out figures for January to June this year compared to the previous year. What's interesting is, of course, East Asia is up by 12.9% compared, but Europe is also up by 15.9%. So Europe's coming back as well. The rest of them you can pretty much count out because their numbers are so small compared with those two that they're insignificant. I mean, the Americas is up 3.6%, but they're talking 400,000 against 3.6 million for East Asia. People are coming back. What the figures don't measure, of course, is how much money they're bringing with them. Are these quality tourists or are they cheap package tourists? My sense is that a lot of them are package tourists. There are huge deals now. And the airlines, who've taken a huge hit, have actually risen to the occasion quite well. They're providing really very cheap flights these days. You can get I checked on the internet, the cheapest flight from Heathrow to Phuket and back again at the moment is $36,000. Which is very, very cheap indeed. I mean, it used to be 150. So people can afford to fly here. The question is how much will they spend?
I'd like to say, I think
both Bill and Alasdair have answered the question, but if I can have a look at Alasdair's notes, I'll just see if there's anything else I can What Alasdair's notes, because I did pick across, do tell us is actually, and the Tourism Authority of Thailand and the Ministry of Tourism and Sport will tell us that the arrivals in Thailand are up. I don't think that's wrong. What has 6 to 8 years is that the number of hotel rooms, the number of choices that tourists has increased by an enormous percentage. I have no idea what it is, but I would say that the rooms in Phuket in the last 5 years have possibly increased by something like 40, maybe 50%. There are guest houses, there are villas, there are people that own villas who are possibly affected by the financial crisis who are now renting their villas out. I'm not sure if they're all doing it in the correct way. I wish they were, but maybe they're not. But they're renting their properties out. There are more hotel rooms, there are more guest houses, there are more choices. There's Khao, there's Krabi. So there's an enormous amount of product out there. The amount of people increase coming here, there is an increase. It sounds great from a public relations point of view, but the increase is not equal to the increase in the amount of rooms that are available for people to stay. I might want to just add one thing on that. The fact that people are still building hotels here, and the fact that hotel management companies, the big chains, are still coming in here to run them, indicates that there are quite a few people out there who are betting on tourism recovering quite nicely. You don't spend millions of dollars building a new hotel if you don't think it's going to work. And I don't think they're all mad either. Hotels and hotel management companies look long term. A lot of us tend to look short term and think, oh, frankly, this month's terrible. Hotel companies think, well, yeah, this decade's not so good, but the next decade might be better.
Thank you.